So I'd like to kind of sum up where we are right now, as well as talk about the next part, which is going to be the gray LCD cable. Again, I kind of just have the two LCD cables, the black and the gray, kind of taped down just to show you. Of course, the black is going into our DVI connector, the 4 wires. And then we have the gray cable, which, while you could think of the black as the real functions, the real signal, the gray cable is kind of the power management cable that does kind of the maintenance work for the DVI connection or the TMDS connection. So I want to break this down into really 4 parts. This is there's really 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 cables that come out of here, and really 3 of them are going to go to ground. And when I say ground, I mean the black Molex. You could clip on an alligator clip and bring it right over the black Molex. Also, 3 more are going to go to power, and this is going to be 5 volts. Now, technically, the LCD actually calls for 3.3 volts. I've not noticed any significant difference by using the slightly higher voltage, but if you're more comfortable using 3.3 and you have an SATA adapter, something that has 3.3 volts on it, a power source, an ATX power source, you can certainly hook up to that and you'll have probably the same result. Again, I just want to also just mention that just make sure you're using the right wires here. Some of them look a little bit similar. The ones that are going to the ground are a blue, a gray, and a green. The ones that go to power are kind of this pale orange, a purple, and also a yellow wire. So, the purple in particular can look a little bit like the blue and the gray. So, just, when you look closely, you can tell the difference. But just, make sure, especially with these power wires, because you can short something out. So that's part 1 is ground. Part 2 is going to be power. Part 3 are 2 extra wires called the clock and the data that are going to go just right into 2 of the DVI connector pins. And then the 4th part involves this lone wire right here, and this is actually called the VDID. This is actually a wire that receives a 5-volt signal, and this one is going to be a little bit tricky because we're kind of manipulating this 5-volt signal in order to fill some gaps in the DVI. I mean, this was an all-in-one. It was never intended to receive any other signal. It was always supposed to be kind of on and there, the monitor. So we have to kind of trick the source, so to speak, into into a full DVI connection. So, and we're going to use this. We're going to split this wire to do so, and it sounds more complicated than it is. It's really, we're going to make a simple kind of a split. Now, the one thing that does make it somewhat complicated is the fact that we do need 4 extra wires. One of these wires, can really be anything, but in terms of it doesn't need a specific pin on the end. However, the other 3 wires are going to be plugging into the DVI connector, and as we've seen, just wrapping a tiny wire around here really it's just not going to hold. So we really should use wires that have the pins on them, meaning that have these same pins that are going to fit into our connector. Now, if you have an extra neck, that works out great. If you happen to have some hookup wire or some LVDS cable that fits this perfectly too, that's great. I have not come across any other pins this size, unfortunately, that are just easily obtained. So, and to use a whole extra neck and have people buy a 30, 40, or however much they go for part, really for these tiny pins, seems like a waste. So I've come up with a solution which kind of uses as much of the existing iMac G4 as possible. And the thing is that we have all these nice pins over here, that are just going to clip onto a wire and go to the ground. So, what I want to do is I want to essentially take these wires, and I need about a good, 3-4 inches of these wires, and I want to use these pins to create my new wire while still hooking up where they come from to the ground source. Because again, it's going right to a Molex. The Molex does not need these pins, but we do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just peel back the shielding of this wire. And again, you can choose to use the grounds. You can use the 3 wires from the for the power as well. I would not use these 3, however, because again, in some variation, this one is not going to connect to. So I apologize, I lost power for a second, but the VEDID we're not going to connect it directly to it, but one thing is that it is technically supposed to kind of connect to it. So in an alternate setup, you might want to have the ability to connect it to the DVI. So I wouldn't want to really take that away when we have pins that are clearly not going to there's no way that they're going to need to connect to a DVI connector like that. So I would not touch these 3 pins. You can use these. I'm going to just use the grounds, really for no particular reason. Just the fact that they're grounds. Now again, you can even feel these wires. They're just thicker. They're bulkier. They're higher gauge. The shielding can be removed easier. They can be stripped. They're much different than even these wires, and certainly different than the signaling wires in the Blackwell, which are much thinner and almost impossible to really strip and get a reliable connection. So again, these are they're grounds. So we're not really you're not carrying a very sophisticated signal. So what I want to do is peel back the shielding, and you'll see that there's this kind of extra shielding piece right here. So we do have to cut this off. So if you have a wire cutter, you have a pair of scissors, whatever that is, just give this a little snip. Again, I don't need to take this out of the shot. We just want to cut this little piece off. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start peeling back. And again, the ones that I'm particularly interested in, are the 3 ones that are going to go to the ground: the blue, green, and gray. So, to peel back this, you can use an X-Acto knife. I think it's you make sure you want to cut anything. At this level, actually, if you did cut these wires, it's not quite as critical as it is the black wire. You can probably resolder these, but again, I'd probably recommend using more of a blunt instrument to make sure you don't make a mistake. So I'm using just kind of a flathead screwdriver just to kind of get this kind of started right here. So again, we want to be very careful which wires we quote-unquote harvest for this. So, I'm going to take, again, I just want to, just make a note of kind of the length. I mean, it's probably, about, a little bit longer than a middle finger length of wire. So, we're talking, just a couple inches, nothing dramatic. So, and again, what we really concerned about are these pins, that we want to have extra pins that we can plug in. So we want to identify very carefully and make sure that we're using the right ones. And again, I'm going to harvest the ground. So orange, yellow, and purple are the power. Okay. So we want to make sure I'm not going to use those, although you can, but I'm just not. The ones I wouldn't recommend not using are the hot pink kind of reddish wire, which is the VEDID, the white, and the black I definitely would not use. So. And then I want to identify the ones I am going to use, which are the green, the gray, and the blue. Okay, so I do want to leave enough room for me to both cut and then to leave enough room to kind of strip. So I'm probably gonna cut right there. So we have 3 wires. Again, want to just check them, make sure we're not making an error in cutting the purple one by accident. And I'm going to cut them right here, and get my wire stripper out with as a wire cutter on the edge, and so leaving about that much room. I'm just going to snip them off. Okay. So now we have 3 wires that have the pins we need on the end. Okay, so make sure that you place these somewhere that you know where they are. Now, one thing we're going to have to do is strip off the edge of both these wires, as well as our remaining kind of hubs, or the ground wires that we have remaining there. So there are small wire strippers. If you are desperate, you can always solder this off, but sometimes that leaves kind of a sticky plastic residue. I'm going to probably just use the tried and true method of using your teeth, but do not. The thing I'm probably just gonna advise is just twist them together. That way you have a pretty substantial thing to kind of grab hold of. So now we have our grounds. They're all twisted together, ready to go. And I'm probably going to end up lengthening this a little bit. If you want, you can certainly use some of the extra cables that we have. Just from the for instance, here's the cable from the fan. If you wanted just to take the black cable, to give it its length back. Again, all these wires are going to the same exact place, so it would probably be fine. I'm just going to hook this up to a black Molex alligator clip anyway for now, so I'm not going to bother lengthening it right here. So, but certainly, if you so desire, you can lengthen it back to its original length. And so we have our 3 wires. Just bring those into the shot so you make sure you see them. They're a little tough to see. And we have what's left of our cable. So take a black alligator clip, okay, and let's clip it on to our grounds. Okay, and again, this is grounds. This is going to the black Molex. Now, and obviously, as we talked before, because I removed one of the pins of my Molex, I only have 2 blacks, but you'll have 4, so you have plenty of room to add a ground. And let me just take up a piece of electrical tape on my Molex splitter, and I'm going to put this on. And there we go. So our grounds are hooked up. Now, just to let you know, I am actually going to add one more wire to this grouping, and ironically, it's going to be the wire from kind of once it came, and I'll explain that in a second. So we have our grounds hooked up. Let's just, to get these out of the way, let's hook up our powers. Again, they're going to 5 volts. If something's going to 5 volts, I like to use a red wire just to delineate that. And so I'm looking for the orange. I'm looking for the yellow, and I'm looking for the purple. So these 3 wires are now going to be hooked up to the Molex 5 volts, and already you can see how few wires we have left. So again, I left the pins on here. You can see that this is the same effect. If you needed these pins, or if you messed up, or you broke a pin, or something happened along the way, you cut it down too far or something, these are certainly kind of a backup source of pins without having to buy a whole new neck. So obviously having the pins on there gives it a little bit more substance, but again, if it's all just either going to be soldered or just clipped onto a wire anyway, what's the difference? So this is going to go to a 5 volt. As you know, if you're counting, our 5 volts are pretty much used up at this point, but it doesn't matter. Just make some. We'll just make some room. So here's the one that's going to the inverter, I believe, to the green, and I'm just going to push that back a little bit, and again, take a little bit for my own. Okay, so 3 wires left. Okay, one of these came out. I apologize, or I actually ended up including the white. See how easy it is to mistake the color. That's why I always verify before you cut. I took the white instead of the it looks like the pale orange. So let me just redo this. Going to 5 volts.